Today is a very dark and gloomy day on the farm. We got about an inch of rain today. There was tons of really strong storms. We had a wind gust of almost 60 miles an hour. It's been a wild day, so tonight I'm going to be recording a video talking about what the worst chicken I've ever owned here. I'm going to answer two questions. Two ways this question can be answered. The worst single chicken I've ever owned on this farm, and the worst breed of chicken. Keep in mind, this is all from personal experience, so be sure to comment down below which breed of chicken you think was your worst and what your single worst chicken was. And the second one is optional, but I recommend doing the first one so we can help build a massive compilation of all these different breeds. I might just do a part 2, so let's get into it. So the worst single chicken I've ever owned on this farm, if I was asked this question 2 weeks ago, my answer would have been Falcon. However, nowadays, my perspective on this has shifted just a bit. Not a whole lot, but just a bit. See, when we take a look at this, there are many breeds of chickens that I've owned here on the farm that weren't really the greatest. First time around, we had some great Buff Orpingtons, but by the time we got the ones in the farm flock, the Buff Orpingtons just weren't it. I don't know what happened to them. Like, they weren't nearly as good as they were originally. With the first couple of Buff Orpingtons, but the Barred Rocks did suffer just a bit in the farm flock, not nearly as bad as our poor little Buffs did. And there is most likely a reason behind that. See, back in the good old days, we used to have 2 roosters. Well, 3, technically. Once we moved Falcon, Kit Kat, and Gray Cloud out to the pet flock, we didn't think Falcon was a rooster. We thought he was a hen that was just a bit bigger than the rest until one day he just had a growth spurt and started crowing, so that was quite the interesting day, if I don't say so myself. But yes, this specific breed of chicken that I had owned was, we had many Green Queens as well. We had, I believe, a good, 3 of them in that flock. Yes, we only had 3 because they were brand new. They were new for 2020, and we got 3 of them. We had Gray Cloud, Falcon, and of course, Snow White. Now here is why I chose my rooster Snow White as the worst rooster I've ever owned. First of all, he was like a bad rooster masked in a nice rooster persona. It was not good at all. Like, for a little while he was just fine, and then one day he just defeated Waldo in battle, because if you don't know, roosters, if there's multiple roosters in the flock, they're gonna battle it out to see which one is crowned the victor of the flock, or the #1 rooster. And one day, I guess these things don't really have a lot of context to them. So like, if you just win one battle, even though you've lost the rest, you just automatically become the biggest in the flock. And for Snow White, that was literally and figuratively. He weighed about 9 pounds, whilst Waldo weighed like 4 pounds. Waldo was way more in shape though. Snow White, on the other hand, was not a good rooster at all. I cannot name a single instance where he actually helped out my chickens in the slightest. In fact, whenever there was danger nearby, he'd just go and hide with the rest of the chickens. In fact, he'd want the rest of the chickens to pile on top of him so he would be the last one out of there. On the other hand, you had Waldo out here standing guard. He fought off a fox 2 times and survived both. The only time he was ever claimed as a victim was in the coyote attack back last year. That was over a year ago. That's crazy. But that unfortunate day cemented Waldo in a book of incredibly good roosters, because unlike Snow White and even Falcon to an extent, they didn't really do their jobs, like, at all. Snow White, I'm pretty sure he just got caught up one day and was like taken away by like a fox or something. I never found feathers. Well, I did find a couple, but I'm pretty sure those were already there, so I don't really know. That was back in 2022. He hasn't been here in a good long while. It's been over 2 years. And I'd prefer to keep it that way, because if he was added back to the farm right now, the farm would just go to shambles like that, because that is the consequences of not checking your roosters beforehand. Now, the single worst chicken breed I've ever owned on this farm has changed over time. I've owned many breeds of chickens, and the single worst one is the hardest one to choose for obvious reasons. Because at one point, back in 2021, I would have given you this answer. But in 2022, I would have given you this answer, and so on and so forth. But here's what I'm feeling in 2024. Last year, I would have said the Green Queen if I was to do this video a year from today. But right now, in the big 2024, I'm gonna say the Silver Laced Wyandottes were by far the worst breed of chicken I've ever owned here. Because we went from having, we got 10 green queens, right? We went from having 2 out of 3 of the green queens we've ever owned being roosters, to now only like out of the 13 green queens we've ever owned, 10 of them were hens. So we had a lot of good success with the previous batch that we got back in August of last year. So I have to bump them down a couple spots because they're not all that bad when they're hens, because Gray Cloud existed. Gray Cloud was a great chicken. So I'm gonna say, for a fact, a 100% proof of fact, the silver laced Wyandottes were the worst I've ever owned. And I've explained this in many videos. It's not that I hate them, it's just that they're not the greatest. I've owned many great chickens. Like, they're simply not on the level of the Barred Rocks, the Buff Orpingtons, the Easter Eggers, the Leghorns, the Rhode Island Reds, and all that sort of stuff. They're down all the way down there, while the other ones are up at the top of those trees in terms of how good quality they are. See, they laid okay eggs, but we never really found them. They'd lay them in different locations, and they weren't really the friendliest either. And for whatever reason, as I've explained in many of my videos talking about them, they seem to have a magnet pre-installed into them that attracts predators. In fact, they were the fastest ones to go when we got that new batch back in November 2022. So yeah, that was interesting. And of course, always remember, this is going to change over time. I'll probably just remake this video in 2025 and see what ends up happening. So be sure to click that like and subscribe button for more like this. I'm going to give some more opinions on chickens. So comment down below, what was the worst chicken breed you've ever owned? Anyways, if you're interested in chickens, be sure to click the playlist on the screen right now, because trust me, there's some good stuff on there, and I will see you there. See you in the next one. Bye.